Tonight on PM Express, we're back to a conversation that threw Parliament into a chamber of fisticuffs, a free-for-all fight as both sides pushed to have their positions upheld. Now, Parliament resumes tomorrow with the E-Levy consideration back on the table. Indeed, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta last week assured a bipartisan approval has been obtained for this tax policy, which government describes as crucial to survival of the economy. The minority has been reacting, insisting no such agreement has been reached. Tonight, we want to understand where we are with this E-Levy. What has happened to consensus building? But just so you are refreshed, let me walk you through a little background. So this is the question we asked: what are the stakes? Because members are expected to deliberate and vote on the bill when they resume tomorrow. This is what the E-Levy will cover: mobile money transfers between accounts on same electronic money issuer, mobile money transfers from an account on one EMI to recipient on another EMI, transfers from bank accounts to mobile money accounts, transfer from mobile money accounts to bank accounts, bank transfers on digital platform or application which originate from bank account belonging to an individual to another individual, cumulative transfers of 100 per day, 100 cedis per day made by same person, transfers between accounts owned by same persons, transfers for the payment of taxes, fees, charges on the Ghana.gov platform. Now, the E-Levy will not impact on electronic clearing of checks, specified merchant payments, i.e. payments to commercial establishments registered with GRA for income tax and VAT purposes, transfers between principal, master agents and agents' accounts. What will the E-Levy do? Government says it will create jobs and grow private sector to employ more youth. It will accelerate digitalization agenda. It will enhance security of Ghana's digital platforms, aggressively expand road infrastructure, reduce dependence on debt, and reduce crowding out of the private sector to improve access to credit. According to the majority leader, Oseche Mensabon, so the levy was not only approved when the motion to approve the budget was adopted in Parliament, but it was included in the appropriation bill, which was passed unanimously by the House. Okay, so this is revenue versus expenditure, and government over the period has been explaining to us why they need the E-Levy to actually help government expenditure. So if you look at between the period of 2012 to 2022, you realize that this is the highest, 137.5, which is our expenditure. That's how much we need for government expenditure. How much are we raising in revenue? 100.5 billion cedis. And so you see that definitely there's a deficit that needs to be. So the question has been, even with this deficit, where are we going to get it from? Now, you look at the total revenue versus tax revenue, and there you have it. Total revenue, if you look at 2022, you have what? Total revenue of 100.51 billion Ghana cedis. And then you have total tax revenue, which is at 80.17 for 2022. Now, how does the tax revenue ratio looks like? This is the graph for you. You look at 2013, and then this is the lowest in 2020. Now, come back to 2022, and you have 79.80 there. Also, a little closer to 2018 over there. So 79.80% for 2022. We're back here in Parliament. What are the stakes? And that's the question I'm asking tonight. My guest in the studio is Habib Idrisu, who is Deputy Majority Whip and MP for Tolon. Also joining me via Zoom will be Ahmed Ibrahim, who is Deputy Minority Whip and MP for Banda. Professor Lord Mensah, who is an Associate Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, will also join us. And Mr. Franklin Kujo is founding president of Imani Africa. Let's delve into the issues properly after this break. Welcome back to PM Express. I'm grateful, all of you, Honorable Habib, I'm grateful for your time in the studio, and I'm grateful for all of you on the on Zoom. for your time. Definitely, I have to start from the studio. The minority says that they've not been consulted. That means that we are back at the problem we had. There's no consensus building, right?
I don't know if our colleagues in the minority are saying that they haven't been consulted, they haven't been talked to. This, as we resume tomorrow, it is not something new. It is part of the budget document that was presented to Parliament by the Finance Minister. We all saw what actually happened with regards to the E-Levy. We have had a discussion, we have discussed about it thoroughly, we have consulted each other before we adjourn. And in 2022, as we resume tomorrow, it's not something new. We have actually been looking at the documents, talking to our colleagues, and then be engaging so that when we resume, it will be a smooth sail for the E-Levy to be passed.
But looking at the back and forth, won't the majority at least advise the finance minister to step down a bit as a starter?
Step down a bit. I don't actually get it from that direction. But what government and the finance minister have been able to do is that the majority have been able to engage the finance minister, and the finance minister have been able to engage the telecos, and the telecos are able to drop their in terms of the levy they already taken existing.
So why not government also stepping down from the 1.75?
By 0.25. But if you look at it, like majority leader was rightly saying, you see, it is part of the budget document that was brought in terms of the 1.75, in terms of the E-Levy, the revenue target of the E-Levy, that was incorporated as against the expenditure government is expecting to spend. So it means that in effect, if you are saying that, okay, E-Levy, I want to take 1% out of the E-Levy, it means that you have to come with a supplementary budget, because the revenue target against your expenditure will now reduce, and it means that you have to do cuts or you have to present another budget for it to be done.
Is it difficult to do?
It's not being difficult, but it is just asking myself, if I am already paying 2% in terms of E-Levy, which the money have no benefit to me in terms of being in this country. Because if you look at those who actually take, for example, if you come to MTN like that, for example, about 70% of the shares is owned by South Africa, which is a South African company. If I send MTN mobile money, I'm already paying 1%, and so the person receiving to also paying another 1%, which is 2%. Then you ask yourself, what is the benefit of this 2% to the development of my country? Then you ask yourself, what the 1.75 government is proposing, what is government going to use it for? Will it be able to help my country? Will it be able to help my economy, help my kids? That is the question we need to ask, and we should be able to be frank with each other and say that, look, Ghana, we are in difficult times. Believe it or not, COVID have hit every economy, and as a result, we need to appreciate that government need to take revenue so that we'll be able to, fund some government project that is going on. Everywhere in the country, nobody is happy with the tax man, especially taxation. Even if we bring it to 1%, even to 0.5%, people will still complain. But we need to build positive attitude towards taxation. We need to be able to help to build a nation. We need to be able to help to increase our tax to GDP in this country.
I don't even think that the conversation has to do with people accepting to pay the tax, but I think the conversation has been, what do governments use the monies for? Are they used for the appropriate or the purposes for which they are paid? We'll get into that. Let me bring in Ahmed Ibrahim. Mr. Ibrahim, since Parliament went on break on Christmas, what has been the level of engagement between the minority and government on the E-Levy? Mr. Ibrahim? So let's try and get that fixed. So you talk about the telcos stepping down on their charges so the government can charge
by 0.25%.
By 0.25%. So government can still go ahead and charge the 1.75. I mean, 0.25% is not the same as 1.75%.
But the overall effect of what actually is going, if actually you were being charged by 2% or by the telecos, the government is also going to charge you 1.75%. The overall effect is that government being engaged or engaging the telcos to reduce their own by 0.25 will have a direct effect on the impact on transactions that are going to be done. So government have been able to do that, and you could even see that government have been able to do a lot of engagements, press conferences, town hall meetings, and to be able to let Ghanaians know that, look, this tax is very necessary. It is very important for our development. Because, you see, when you look at the numbers, it will marvel you. We have 30.8 million Ghanaians, and out of that, less than 9 million pay taxes. So by trying to broaden the tax net of the informal sector, government need to bring measures, and will be able to help so that we can be able to collect tax more. But it means that in Ghana, we have 9 people who are carrying the burden of 30.8 million Ghanaians. And our tax to GDP, around 13.5%. If you look on an average in Africa, about 30 countries pay averagely 16.5. Even our neighboring countries, if you go to Togo, they are doing about 16.5. You go to Burkina Faso, they are doing about 19.5 in terms of tax to GDP. Government is still struggling. Now, it is 2 ways we want government to raise money: to go and borrow, or to be able to tax. Wherever we are going to borrow, we are going to borrow somebody taxpayers' money at an interest, so that government will be able to. And we said that now let's reduce borrowing, because some of them come with conditions and other things. So why not we try to generate the resources in Ghana so that government will project maybe by the end of 2022 we should be able to hit around 15% in terms of tax to GDP. How
about cutting down government expenditure? Having admitted that COVID has hit us, we are all in trouble. So leadership by example.
But you think, I think that last week or so, the finance minister have made the announcement that there's going to be a cut in government expenditure by 20% across board. So he's actually doing that cutting, so that government is reducing its expenditure, so that we'll be able to. Because if we look at now our expenditure against our revenue, expenditure at 137, whereby we are trying to raise a revenue of 100 million. It means that we are still already in a deficit of about 37. So it means that government, even cutting down their expenditure, will still be in deficit, but the impact is going to be minimal, and then we'll be able to move ahead.
So if government is cutting expenditure, that should also have an effect on the E-Levy, then step down to maybe 1%.
But you see, that's what I said earlier on. If you have a revenue target that you are going to meet, and you have presented before Parliament as against the expenditure, you are expecting this revenue, that is why you want to expend this, then that document is presented before Parliament. It has been thoroughly debated. The budget is approved. And then they come to the appropriation, of which the E-Levy is part of the appropriation. It was also debated, agreed on, and approved that, okay, we have given the finance minister the go-ahead. Go and do the appropriation, do the spending. Now, the E-Levy was part of the budget that was presented. It was part of the document. It's because a bill needs to come to give them the legally mandate to be able to take money from Ghanaians. That is the process that we are in at the moment. It has passed through the committee stage. I think at the committee, they voted on whether it should come at a certificate of agency or not, of which the majority had it that it should come under the certificate of agency. And then this problem of First Deputy Speaker gets in, and then they are mad the beauty of the whole thing. So in effect, E-Levy is necessary. In effect, we need it. Even previously, before Momo was booming in 2009, 2010, 2011, there was already Financial Transaction Act, of which Momo is a financial transaction. But it was not as effective as that then. But at this moment, to be honest with you, COVID have hit every economy, even US, which we think that they are superpowers. They have to inject about $3 trillion into their economy to try to stabilize it. Still, you will see that unemployment is on the horizon in the country. Graduates finish, they are relying on government to give them employment. Government have to tell us how the E-Levy is going to be used on the roads in terms of employment, whereby they will bring in the U-Start. U-Start alone, it means you finish university, then you want to get into trade. You start. Government give you some kind of money. They train our young women who want to go into trade, into petty trading, and give you capital to start, so that you will be able to move. Government is, I think, committing about 1 billion Ghana cedi into this. And after that, then there will be international donors, there will be other banks getting engagement, so that 7 billion will be used, so that at the end of the day, we'll create over 5 million jobs in Ghana. It is painful paying tax of any kind, but it is necessary for the development of the nation.
Well, this particular one has been described as discriminatory tax. Let me bring in Franklin Kujo. Mr. Kujo, we've seen the CSOs with their own position on this matter. Is the position shifting as at now?
First of all, I do not understand why there's no single member of the NPP actually standing up to the executive and saying that, look, we all understand there's a problem. There's a huge gap in the fiscal should I say, basket of the government that needs to be filled. But for God's sake, can we do some reduction of this E-Levy? I think the debate has gone on as to the rationale or otherwise of the E-Levy. At this juncture, I've not seen any movement towards positive movement towards the acceptance of the E-Levy, either by sentiment surveys or actual surveys. And for me, anybody who is watching the space for the NPP or for the ruling government should be bothered that at least there's not been any movement in a positive way, by the way, towards the support for the E-Levy, general support. The point is, people are accommodating of a reduction in the rate. So if there's something can be done about it, then we can move on. And it appears that's what everybody is asking for. I don't think this is a political opposition being hell-bent on opposing the E-Levy. I've heard that, and I've heard many Ghanaians as well. I think the conversation now is about, look, maybe start from a particular percentage point. And the neighbors that we were being told that had introduced the same E-Levy did not start off at 1.75%. So for me, I worry greatly that I don't know who within the ruling government can actually look into the eyes of the presidency, executive, and tell them, look, we are edging towards the precipice. It's about time we back down a bit. So there's not been any serious engagement over the past holidays that I know. That is supposed to move us towards a consensus, because there's no consensus. The consensus should start from the executive. As I said, my good friend in the studio understands that, and he accepts that there's a problem. But this problem is not just a problem of COVID, because COVID gave us lots of money as well. The COVID blessings, I call them, huge monies. So we cannot just say that COVID is the only reason why we are in the hole. The truth of the matter is that we are in dire straits. But in order to come out of the straits, I think there must be some reasoning. Can we get to the middle ground and have this thing done and dusted with? But the adamant position of the executive, unfortunately, is not helping. The challenge is that the greater challenge is that you're not communicating effectively why they want to maintain the 1.75. It's just that it should be done, and part of it to be used for employment generation. Seriously, I've always questioned the rationale for government to tax people, taxes, and then create all these employment scams. I call them scams from the days of JIDA and what have you. Today, there's a proliferation of a lot of these schemes as well. Government has no business in setting up or creating these jobs that they always say they are trying to create. In any case, you'd have thought that the private sector would be incentivized enough to create the jobs. You tell me, what has been the value addition of NAPCO to the economy, apart from billowing a lot of money? And almost all these employment agencies have zero return on value to the economy. So for me, I thought that at least we could do without the portion of the E-Levy that is supposed to go to creation of employment. In any case, weren't we told that the communication service tax was supposed to be used in creating employment? What has happened to that? So my summarized thinking is that, look, the government is being too strong-headed, and I fear that there seems to be nobody within the government, academics, technocrats, and party foot soldiers who stand up and say, look, this is going to hurt us in the next election. And it's clear that the sentiments are against the ruling government. So they should back down from the percentage, from the standpoint of the percentage.
Thankfully, Ahmed Ibrahim has joined us again. I'm just asking what kind of engagement has gone on between the minority and government since you went on break?
As a matter of fact, it is very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate the kind of governance that we are seeing these days. And I'm very worried that for the whole recess, government, who was confronted with a lot of challenges for his inability to push through his E-Levy, went to celebrate the Christmas instead of choosing to meet the stakeholders who mattered in executing this kind of business. And I'm very surprised. So it will interest you to know that government or nobody in the MPP MPs, or nobody in the MPP ministers, or nobody in the executive, including even the President of the Republic and his chief of staff, has met or engaged anybody in the minority, not even the minority leader or the party or the MPs within this recess. So today, I was not surprised that we went for business committee meeting. To my belief, government could not table the E-Levy as part of the business to be executed in this week. So we are starting tomorrow, but the E-Levy is not on the business statement for this week.
But it will definitely come back, right?
Oh, Aisha, once it was not, government says he is now going to consult. So government is now telling us today that he's now going to consult the minority, civil society organizations, the political parties, and all those people who matter in the passage of the bill. But my question is, why did government choose not to do this in the recess? So the uncertainty in the economic landscape will linger on for some time, because you are the very person who is complaining. We were on recess, and the speaker said, go and engage so that by the time we resumed, cool heads will prevail. You chose not to do that. Today we went for business committee meeting. You are saying you are now going to do the consultation. So can you blame we in minority as obstructing government business? The answer is no. And Aisha, what we are saying is that we are not representing ourselves. And what government must understand also is that democracy means government of the people. So the government is of us and for the people, and the government is governing for us and by the people, and we put in there. So government should not think that because we are in the executive, we'll do whatever we wish. No.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Is the minority stance still a complete rejection of the tax measure, or they're willing to shift their position a bit?
Aisha, as a matter of, we don't even know the nature of what government is bringing. So how can you say either complete rejection or non-rejection? We made certain suggestions to government. We told government that, look, when you are in austerity period, like you are now, you need to cut on your expenditure. Aisha, what is the essence of government special development initiatives when you are denying our district assemblies of their constitutional resources? Period. Secondly, what is the essence of government spending 3.1 billion Ghana cedis into the office of government machinery when you need only 6.9 billion on E-Levy? Aisha, What is the essence of government employing about 10,000 people into the Ministry of Local Government only to go and be sitting there without doing anything because government is not giving them the District Assembly Common Fund that they need to work? Aisha, what aspect of government have you seen that the government is saying that, oh, now we are in austerity, therefore I'm reducing month expenditure on ABCD? So government is spending more than even he used to spend before COVID time. And what we are saying is that no, we can't be going on the same way. But the worrying aspect of it is which of the fund that government inherited that this government has not mortgaged. Our GET fund, you came to meet it, you have mortgaged it. Our road fund, you came to meet it, you have mortgaged it. Our extra energy sector levy, you came to meet it, you have mortgaged it. So now you have tightened your hands, and you are now saying that even our capital, which is digital money, you are going to tax that one. So what we are saying is that no, let's engage. We are not seeing our way clear. And we cannot say that, oh, we are taking entrenched position A, B, C, D. But all we are saying is that, look, Ghanaians have brought us there. We are representing them. Let's listen to them and do what will favor Ghanaians. That's the position of the minority.
So you've heard the minority's position. Number one, there's not been any engagement. Number two, you're being accused of not even communicating effectively. And this tax, they say it's a discriminatory tax.
So I don't get it when my colleague, my respected colleague, Honorable Ahmed, is saying that we haven't consulted them. When you have made a declaration that you have zero tolerance for E-Levy, so what are we going to consult you on, the zero tolerance? No. We have engaged and we have even set up a committee that was constituted of our 20-member committee, of which I was a member. He was a member of that committee, for us to see how we'll be able to help.
Did you make any headway with that committee?
Because at the end of the day, in that committee, you could see that the minority leader had made a statement, and he said that, oh, minority will tolerate 1% of the E-Levy.
He said he didn't say that.
No, it was a video that was played. It's not something that whether he has said or not. Okay. It was a video that was played. Then the minority Chief Whip, Honorable Muntaka, issued a statement on behalf of them and said that what the minority leader said is not the position of the caucus. That was his own opinion. And for that matter, they have zero tolerance for the E-Levy. Okay. Consultation doesn't necessarily limit the government from just engaging the NDC or the minority in parliament. It has gone beyond that. And that consultation is the same consultation that had gotten the telecos to reduce their part by 0.25%. It is the same consultation. It is the same consultation that we have been able to do, and government is now able to see that. Even there were other things. You see, sometimes when we want to build consensus, the minority had brought 5 issues. It is the same consultation that we were able to get the finance minister to cut down government expenditure by 20% across board. They said this Cater C defense was a problem to them. Government have been able to allocate about 10 million Ghana cedi, of which it was not budgeted for, so that feasibility studies could be able to go on. You talked about other issues of which government is able to meet you. What on your part as a minority have you been able to do?
But what on your part has government also done about the E-Levy? I mean, you don't go to a negotiating table with, you seem to have taken a staunch position.
No, they have rather taken a staunch position. If I am going to bring in a levy and I am proposing a 1.75% of it, of which the telecos are already taking 2% of it, then we come to the negotiation table. We are talking and we are getting into figures. We said about 1%. You said no.
Have you proposed anything to the minority and it's rejected?
They have told us that it is 0% on E-Levy.
Have you made any proposals yet?
The proposal is that if you have created a room for negotiation and a room for you to be flexible in terms of your stand, but when you say that the minority will not support anything E-Levy, it is 0%. If it is 0.05, they will still not support it. Then, but you have been able to be part of the budget of which the E-Levy is part, and we passed the budget and passed the appropriation bill. You see, when he says about the business committee meeting for us to be, I'm also a member of the business committee. So when we go into business committee, we are able to see what is coming in the ensuing week. The speaker was not present when we were adjourning for the holidays to come. He was not there. So he did not give directive as to what government is supposed to do. Government is committed to make sure that we bring development into this country. The government is concerned about Ghanaians and care about the Ghanaian people. This is not the only government that have brought taxes into this country. A lot of other governments have been able to bring taxes which are nuisance. Some have direct, even killer taxes that was done in this country. And my learned senior member...
So I remember that when the NPP came into power, he said you were going to cut
we cut down a lot of it. But
this is one of the taxes that they describe as nuisance also.
This is a new tax that is coming in. It hasn't been settled.
So from the way both of you are talking, it means that...
If NDC, our friends in the minority, for the fact that during the Christmas period we haven't been able to have a formal meeting, it doesn't mean that consultation
hasn't gone
The
on.
Consultation just doesn't have to be between the NDC and the MPP. We have a third party, fourth party, civil service organization, government expenditure.
But at the end of the day, it's the members of parliament who will do the approval. So definitely they
have made their stand clear to us.
So you will do it without
unless Honorable Ahmed is now telling us that, okay, the minority is now open for us to do, to change and shift our stand from a zero tolerance to the E-Levy.
Will you change your stance? Will you change your
government is a listening government, and government is ready to be able to negotiate and talk to our colleagues for us to have something that is... You see, I'm yet to be able to come to the understanding that Ghanaians, for that matter, our people don't want their... don't want to pay this E-Levy. And you see, the perception, like I said, everybody doesn't want to pay tax. Even me seated here, I don't want to pay tax, but government need the tax to go. But we have to pay tax, especially in the informal sector. So if you are, like Frank Lukujo was saying, that we haven't been able to make engagement, that is rather unfortunate. If we haven't made any engagement, how did the telecos reduce their own by 0.2? If we haven't made any engagement, why did the government cut expenditure by 0.2%? And to make a statement to say that NABCO haven't been able to make any impact, it's rather unfortunate. So you say that somebody who has been engaged about 100,000 Ghanaians to be paid 700 Ghana cedi a month, and then 100,000 Ghanaians sitting at home and getting nothing. Which is which? Let's appreciate the effort of government.
Let me bring in Professor Mensah. Prof, what will the happenings in Parliament in the coming days mean for investor confidence in the economy and our ability to actually go into the global financial market?
Hi, thank you very much, and good evening to our colleagues in the studio. Now, Aisha, I'm surprised that with all these days, number of days that Parliament had, to themselves, of being in recess, they couldn't end up coming to a convergent point. I'm really surprised with this. But then, if you look at what is happening in our Parliament now, I can tell you that I think we've lost that touch of negotiations, because over the years, Parliament has been simple majority, and policies have been run through without necessarily, going through processes of negotiations here and there. So that cap has been lost. Parliament is supposed to stand for negotiations. We should understand that every single cry that comes from Parliament is not ordinary man's cry. The minority, saying that they don't want the E-Levy is a cry from certain quarters of the country. And so we need to understand that. Now, back to the investor confidence. You need to understand that government ability to raise money boosts confidence in the economy. Now, taxes and then levies has always been a last resort in settling of debt. Usually when you borrow, you borrow for a purpose, and that funds comes to do a project for which the project pays itself. So more or less a self-financing kind of thing. And in the end, the debt does not become a burden on the nation going forward. Even the debt comes to create asset for the nation. Now, if you turn up to rely on levy, rely on taxes, to settle your debt, then it tells the investor out there that what you borrowed, you did not use it for any purpose. Because if you had to use it for a purpose, you should have started gaining some cash flows from those investments and those investments would have been paying the debt. So having a last chance of a resort like levy, which we having these uncertainties as a result, of hung parliament, whether it has to be passed or it shouldn't be passed. Aisha, I can tell you that the communication to the investor community is a huge one. It tells you that, coming to the last resort, the levy and the taxes that you're supposed to rely on to pay for your debt, you are struggling. And so going back to the Eurobond market or any environment or any portfolio investor who is coming into this country, trust me, will resist. That investor is going to require high interest rates, before he can push his money into the Ghanaian economy. Now that tells you that our cost of borrowing is going to go up. And when your cost of borrowing goes up, you go through a cycle of, borrowing and not being able to pay. Especially when you compare your debt in a foreign, currency, because you don't print, dollar in your environment. You need to make sure that you go into businesses that can generate more dollars, or you borrow dollars to defray the dollars that you owe. And every time you go through that chain of borrowing to defray existing debt. And so where I sit, this is a big communication to the, investor community. And at the end of the day, I'm surprised Parliament did not see through this, and we're still going back and forth as to how this, should be, approved or not. I'm surprised to hear from the members of Parliament that there were no engagement here and there. I thought of, we've gone over this, and tomorrow was going to be a rehearsed Parliament, more or less coming to tell us that we've engaged, and then we are coming out to a percentage, not to take that kind of entrenched position of 1.75. I made a case, was it last 3 days or so on your platform, indicating that we should look at this as a project. And now, looking at this as a project means that you may start from a certain percentage. Maybe you can split this into 3 and say, okay, fine, you are doing 1/3 of the 1.75 for now. And then gradually you whet the appetite of the taxpayer, because history has not been on our side. That money earmarked for a purpose goes directly to those things. We don't have that history. Because in the budget and then the appropriation bill, they have something we call reappropriation. Now, reappropriation means that we are within the same, for instance, you are within the same 2 billion frame. You are spending within the 2 billion, but you can reassign funds from one point to the other, which, the finance minister can do that. And so it's very, very tempting. Now that we've removed road tolls, since when? Almost 2 months now. If we should calculate on daily basis what we're supposed to receive on these tolls, we are losing it. And now we are struggling to pass this bill. It's because of this bill that we remove the tolls. Because it's stated clearly in the budget that we're going to use some for what? To not fill in these road tolls. And so I don't know what we're doing as a country anyway. So for me, I think we should be, I was expecting that tomorrow will be, a rehearsed Parliament where this thing can be passed, and then we'll be free in this country.
Prof, is the E-Levy something? Is the E-Levy something that government can do without? given its current plan on revenue and expenditure.
Well, from me, if you are to restore the economy to last year's expenditure, government shouldn't struggle that much. I see the E-Levy to be kind of funds that will go to government, and it will give the government that kind of political muscle to spend its way into other things that they can be free to spend. But if we are to cut off, the E-Levy, let's play by the numbers here. If you look at the quantum of leap from last year's, budget, which was around, 107. Let me take from here, 107.9 billion, and this year we intend to spend 135. If you take interest payment and then, compensation, which you don't have control over, for that one, you can easily estimate the future, because you don't really know, you really know the interest that you're supposed to pay. At the same time, if you are to increase workers' salary by a certain percentage, you should be able to adjust the expenditure to that factor. So effectively, you don't have much problem in estimating that. But there's one item on the expenditure side, which is grants to other government units. Last year, it was 15.5 billion. This year, it's about 26.8 billion. Aisha, this is the difference is way above the, what do we call it? That E-Levy process that we expected, because we are expecting about 7 billion and over. So if you look at the jump is mainly, the jump that we had in the expenditure is mainly under this. So you wonder what kind of grant and other things that will increase by that certain percentage of more than 50% within a year, you know. So we have to really look at the numbers. And if you also look at the, what we call the capital expenditure, also government has control over that one. Last year we spent around 12.7 billion. This year we budgeted around 16.4 billion. And if we are to restore the economy to last year, and we decide that we're going to spend the same quantum of amount for capital expenditure, which we have control over, I mean, we're going to have a scale down of about 4 billion and over. Now let's look at the last item on there, which is goods and services. Goods and services leaped by, 7.2 billion. Now, if you go to this year's budget, it's about 9.1 billion, 2 billion difference, right? We have control over that one as well. And then if you look at the last one, which is others, others. I don't know what goes into others. I'm not fan of, doing a budget and, putting out something like others. You have to be specific and, as much as you can. Last year, it was we budgeted around 7 billion for others, which is almost the same as the E-Levy process that we are expecting. Now, this year, we are looking at about 10 billion for others. That's 3 billion difference. So if you go to into the items and you look carefully on the things that government has control over, I mean those ones that they are the discretion of the government when it comes to expenditure. They should be able to cut down that side of expenditure so that they can live without the E-Levy. So for me, I see the E-Levy to be the communication that is coming out of it from Parliament as a result of not being able to pass, because like I indicated to you earlier, and any country that owes, the last resort is your levying and your taxes. So if government is struggling to pass this levy and the taxes, it tells you that in future, whatever funds you put in our environment, the signal is that government will find it difficult to raise money through taxes and levies to pay, because already we are aware that funds that has been borrowed into the country has not come to create anything to pay for itself. So effectively, that is the communication out there. But I'm saying that let's look at the expenditure side. The ones that are at the government's discretionary, they should be able to control that.
Let me take a break on PM Express. When I return from the break, we'll be looking at whether the majority can actually go ahead and pass this without their NDC compatriots. And I'll also be finding out how the minority intends to go about it. What's the strategy this time around? But again, the MPP's posture, will it affect its fortunes in the coming elections? All of that after this break. Stay with me. Welcome back to PM Express. We're talking about the E-Levy, which has been very controversial. Tomorrow, Parliament resumes. Definitely is going to be back on the table because government says it needs it to run government business. Let me bring you Ahmed Ibrahim. What's going to be your strategy going forward? But again, will you accept that the bill be passed under a certificate of urgency?
Aisha, you see, Parliament is not mechanic. Parliament is the parliament of the people of Ghana. Parliament is sitting tomorrow. And as I told you earlier on, the E-Levy is not on parliamentary calendar for this week.
Okay.
So as we see tomorrow, if you are asking of our plan of action, is tomorrow when we meet on both sides. They are saying they are coming to dialogue. They are now coming to engage because they said they met about 100,000 people. I know, like we've been having in this your program, cutting down on expenditure, like I've said, is what Professor Lord Mensah has said. The same thing is what Imani Ghana has said. And they are all Ghanaians. They know what is happening here. So if in the course of consultation, government realized that what the minority were saying earlier is the same thing being repeated elsewhere, government will see the wisdom in what we are saying. So he's coming to engage us. And I believe we are the Parliament of Ghana, not Parliament of any political party. So as if you are asking us our plan of action, our plan of action is engagement. And don't forget that we also consult civil society organizations like Imani, like CDD, like the academia, the university, including journalists yourself. So we will speak the interests of Ghana. And I believe if it becomes necessary that the E-Levy will be a problem. You brought a budget of 100.5 billion. We've passed about 98 billion for you. So the difference of 6.9, if that is what will bring confusion in this country, government should just take time. Let's see the expenditure side. Where adjustment can be, then we do. But the argument that, oh, you passed the appropriation, so because you passed appropriation, then it means you must pass the E-Levy. Aisha, if Parliament is of that nature, then there's no need for Parliament. What was the argument from the majority when we were passing the appropriation? Oh, if you don't pass the budget, the appropriation, government will not function, government will not be able to pay government workers. We pass it for you, manage the E-Levy. Now you are complaining.
Well, so the majority leader says you passed it plus the E-Levy. But do you honestly think
if that is what he's saying, that's why we are saying, if that is what he's saying, then he should go and start implementing. The budget is already being implemented. If he's saying that we pass it plus the E-Levy, then they should start implementation.
Do you honestly believe that you can do this without...
We are a serious country.
Right.
He engaged the minority leader and said they were going for Kumasi conference, and therefore they needed us to pass the appropriation budget so that they will be free, manage the E-Levy. So if you brought a condition that pass the appropriation for me, manage the E-Levy, and we did it for you, do you now come and say that you pass both together? Then where are we at where we are? We have not passed the E-Levy.
Right.
The E-Levy, they say they are now doing consultation. And the E-Levy is not panacea for Ghana's development. It's like Professor Lord Mensah is saying.
You can go ahead and pass this without your the other side, the NDC MP.
Yes, Aisha, we are not in.
I think what is clear is that the NDC and the minority have made up their stand very clear that they have zero tolerance for the E-Levy, and we think that it is necessary for us to be able to pass the E-Levy for government projects and programs to move on. Mind you, when I hear people saying that the NDC is fighting for the Ghanaians and fighting for... That's not the reason why they are fighting for the Ghanaians. They are frightened, and they are finding it very difficult for the realization that government will be able to raise about 7 billion Ghana cedi out of the E-Levy. Because if government is successful on the E-Levy, government will be able to fund a lot of projects. The one district, one hospital, that's the Agenda 1-1, the free senior high school, that is benefiting every Ghanaian and other things. That will be passed. And for that matter, John Mahama might not be able to come to power. It is not that they are fighting because they think Ghanaians. I'm also a Ghanaian. I also have a constituents. I also have friends. I also have people who matters. We are all saying that government need to be able to raise revenue for to project its own project. But you see, when Professor Mensah was saying, he was saying that the investor confidence is going to reduce because of the E-Levy and other things. But he hasn't actually been able to go deep to understand that if government actually cut down its expenditure, it rather boosts investor confidence in the country. The finance minister have come out to say that we are cutting 20% across board on the government expenditure. This is good news for the international market. This is good for investor, and this is going to build investor confidence. So when we go back in Parliament this week, the most important thing is that we in the majority, we are ever ready to engage them if they shift their position from zero. If they don't shift their position from zero, whatever government also need to do to be able to make sure that this thing is passed peacefully, amicably, and we will not have a problem. This is not the first time that taxes, and this is not the first time, because I remember when NDC brought in VAT in the first place, 17.5%, there was demonstration, there was all kind of things, but they were able to what? Still do it. But you see,
so
we understand the nature of this parliament that 137, and we are in 138 in majority.
So you would do all it takes
so the most important
to make sure that you pass it.
We care for Ghanaians, we care for the development of this country, and we think that the E-Levy is necessary at the moment. Now, if you go to our university, from level 100 to level 400, they are all beneficiaries of free senior house. How is it that funded? NDC briefly, doesn't care about this government.
Briefly, let me give Mr. Franklin Cudjoe the opportunity.
They want John Mahama to come back.
Mr. Franklin Cudjoe,
they cannot get John Mahama to come back.
Mr. Franklin Cudjoe, what's the political risk and consequence the government will it's likely to face if it's insistent on pushing this through?
Well, first of all, a number of fact checkers. When my good friend in the studio says the Minister of Finance has reduced expenditure by 20%, I think there was a moniker. The minister said subject to revenues. I think people miss that. So if you don't have the money, you won't spend anyway. So I don't know what expenditure cuts have been announced. Secondly, the question around the concessions given by the mobile phone companies is not 0.25% on the transaction, it's on charges. And that in itself needs to be quantified properly. In any case, the E-Levy with other countries is on service. It's the service charge, not the transaction itself. To your substantive question about the political risk, look, in 2016, there were about 66 swing constituencies. The MPP won 49 of them. In 2020, it won only 17. Now, that tells you that, and most of these seats are seats within the peri-urban areas. So these sentiments that are being expressed must be carefully analyzed and fed into this analysis. Finally, I just want to say that, look, there's nothing wrong with starting with a reduced rate. When we decided to increase the communication service tax from 6% to 9% in 2019, what happened was that the actual outturn of revenues dropped from 420 million cedis to 414 million. Now, guess what happened? When the Minister of Finance decided to reduce the CST rate from 9% to 5% in 2020, the value actually went up. In fact, it shot up to almost 570 million Ghana cedis. That nearly 45% rate reduction. So, if you were feeding all of this into a proper model, you wouldn't be too gung-ho in expecting $1.75 billion from the E-Levy.
I'm grateful for your time. Franklin Cudjoe is president of Imani Africa. Habib Idris, who's Deputy Majority Whip and MP for Tolong, also joined me in the studio. I'm grateful for your time. Ibrahim Ahmed is Deputy Minority Whip and MP for Banda. He joined us via Zoom. Professor Lord Mensah, Associate Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School. I'm grateful, extremely grateful, gentlemen, for your time. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Enjoy the rest of our programs.